Spaniard, Real Madrid, Dani Ceballos. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another show, for another episode of our Tactical Breakdown series, the show in which we look at the players that Arsenal could, should, hopefully will, and fingers crossed will sign for Arsenal this summer. The news continues to be filling our touchscreens and our social media posts and Twitter and Facebook and everything. Googling every single day Arsenal transfers, just trying to get the latest information. Because things are moving, things are happening, which is really positive for the Arsenal. A great result yesterday, or rather today. It's weird talking about a game that happened overnight, but it was this morning, early in the hours, against Bayern Munich, in which we won 2-1. Plenty of players that stood out in the game, players in which I put in yesterday's video, which was a prediction for the lineup I think will be Arsenal's best lineup next season, which you can go check out, which was a tactical breakdown on all those players I think we might sign. And one of those players features in today's video, which basically comes down to some debates going on Twitter, some people's comments from yesterday's videos, and just basically people wanting to know more. And that is Dani Ceballos, as you can tell, for the reason why you clicked on the video. Now, before we get into it, as always, I want to say a big thank you for helping us reach 12,000 subscribers very, very recently. Your support and your comments and your likes and everything has been so helpful and really appreciated. So please, if you're new to the channel, click that subscription button. Click that little bell as well to notify yourself when we go live and do our raw reactions, and you can get involved in the chat, because building the community is really big for the channel, and seeing the debates in the comment section below are always really great. I'll read through all your comments and reply to as many as I possibly can, so keep that going and keep those positive comments coming in, because as always they are really great and supportive, and they're just really great to read, so thank you ever so much. But let's get straight into the video and talk about Dani Ceballos, Real Madrid centre midfielder, attacking midfielder, if you talk about him more specifically, but he is more of a central midfield player. And it is the reports suggesting that Arsenal have now beaten Tottenham Hotspur to his signature for a loan deal to Arsenal. Now, the title of this video says why Ceballos is the perfect replacement for Aaron Ramsey. Now, I'm going to talk about that in a little bit more detail in a second, and I am going to talk about the fact that there is a lot more to this deal than just say we get a player in for a year. I think this is a really astute signing. I think it means a lot for the club. I think it shows that we've got still a lot of attractiveness and pull to our club in the transfer market, even though we didn't quite get Champions League football this season. And before I give my thoughts on my own tactical breakdown, I'm going to give you the pleasure of listening to my good friend and Spanish expert and host of the La Liga Weekly podcast, Mr. John Driscoll. So I'm going to pass over to John, and he's going to give you his thoughts on Dani Ceballos and why he thinks he is an absolutely fantastic player as well.
There is nothing not to like about Dani Ceballos on loan. Super player, creative, clever, good to watch, attacking midfielder. He can play deeper. The nearest thing that Arsenal at the moment is probably Mesut Ozil, although, as I say, they could probably play together if Ceballos plays deeper on the pitch. It would be daring. I'm not sure you will see them together too many times. Crucially, for Dani Ceballos, he has to play. The reason that he's leaving, or prepared to leave, Real Madrid is that he just hasn't had enough playing time. He went there as one of the brightest young Spanish midfield players, played a bit, wasn't a disaster by any stretch of the imagination, but Zidane didn't really take to him in the first season. The last season there was the shambolic season at Real Madrid, so maybe he didn't develop as much. He will be turning 23 soon, so his last under-21 tournament has just gone, and he was fantastic in that. Scored a couple of great goals, contributed to it as well. He's certainly not an old-style Premier League player, but the Premier League is a different kind of beast from it was 10 years ago, where the physicality reigned. He's not that kind of player. He's not a brilliant physical specimen, Dani Ceballos. He's a fancy Dan. He's even got the name. But I like him. I think he's terrific entertainment. And in terms of there being no transfer fee, and it won't be, it'll be nowhere near Real Madrid's top paid player, because he came from Betis, where he'd come through the ranks, so a pay rise there. And if Arsenal are just matching his wages from Real Madrid, then you really can't fall off. So obviously Arsenal would be hoping to be in a better financial position 12 months down the line, once a few things have been tidied up. So then you're in a situation that you can maybe try and sign Dani Ceballos. But at the moment, honestly, it would be a brilliant signing. You're getting a top quality European young midfielder with loads of experience of European football, of international football, of top flight football, and you're getting all that without a transfer fee. Snap him up.
Snap him up. That is the perfect way to talk about Dani Ceballos. We need to, as quickly as possible, get this deal done. John talks absolutely fantastically about Dani Ceballos. You can check out more of John's stuff at Driscoll FC on Twitter, and you can listen to John's podcast, La Liga Weekly, with Terry Gibson. I'll leave a link to that in the description. You can check out the most recent episode. It's a fantastic show, so please do go and check that out. But John fantastically sums up the reasons why we should be in the market to sign Dani Ceballos, even if it is just for a loan. I'm going to go into my judgment on the player after I've talked about his stats, but I want to focus on his stats, and I want to focus on the player from the video that I think he is replacing. And I think he replaces, just for the season, because of course it is a loan, but I think he replaces Aaron Ramsey absolutely perfectly. And not even that, but in some areas definitely improves on him. Now, yesterday I put out a tweet about how shrewd I thought this signing was, and into the signing of Dani Ceballos, and why it's such an excellent deal for the club. Now, a few people came back at me and said that there's no way that he can replace Aaron Ramsey. In fact, you can see on the screen now a reply I got from @post2anchon on Twitter. And don't worry, I'm not trying to show him up or anything. He replied saying he wanted this into the video, so don't worry about that. But we had a bit of a chat about it, and he put up the graphic showing me his goals and assists compared to Ramsey's XG, his XA. And now, personally myself, I'm not into this predictive stuff with XG, and I think that you need to look at brass tacks and see what the player has done. And so what I'm going to show you is a comparison between Aaron Ramsey and his attack, his defence and his passing compared to the Spaniard last season. So here we go in terms of the attacking stats. You can see on your screen now them popping up. In terms of shots, Ramsey does take that in terms of numbers and accuracy, but shot assists fall on the side of the Spaniard. His dribbles, he's a very, very technically gifted player as Dani Ceballos. He's made more dribbles, and he has a 30% higher success rate in terms of his dribbling. Offensive duels, it's a similar story. More offensive duels and 20% higher in increase of those success of those duels as well. Touches in the box, though, Aaron Ramsey does like to get into the box a lot more than Ceballos does, and he does it 2 times more than the Spaniard. But progressive runs are in the favour of Real Madrid's midfielder. Dani Ceballos likes to push up the field a lot more than what Aaron Ramsey does. He's very, very technical. He likes to be on the ball, and that shows in his attacking gains. So in terms of his attacking stats, whilst he's not scoring the same amount of goals, and he doesn't, because that's not the type of player he is. He's technical. He enables other players, and he does that to great success. He's brilliant on the ball. He makes stuff happen. We desperately need someone who's great on the ball in that middle of the park. We've lacked it since Santi Cazorla left, and he can definitely, whilst, don't get me wrong, he's not Santi Cazorla, he really isn't, but he's got the technical ability to give us that extra little bit of flair in the midfield, and we know that we need that, and he brings that to the squad. In terms of those passing stats, which you can see now, again, it's extremely impressive. He makes more passes, and he's more accurate with his passes than what Aaron Ramsey is. His long passing, whilst is not as numerous, is 20% higher in the accuracy of his long passes that he makes. In terms of through passes and his crosses, Ramsey takes that in both numeracy and accuracy, which is fair enough. Moving on then to passes into the final third, which are absolutely fantastic for the Spaniard because he does them more often, and they're 10% higher in accuracy, and passes into the box are more numerous and more accurate as well. He receives more passes than the Welshman does, and in terms of the ratio, his forward passing is only ever so slightly better in terms of a ratio compared to his backward passes compared to Ramsey, but his forward passes themselves are 16% more accurate than the Welshman's. For me, that is a really damning stat for Aaron Ramsey, and a really, really positive one for Dani Ceballos. In terms of defending, because defending is always going to be key. Aaron Ramsey provides you with such a great engine, such a great player to get back into the team and do his job in the other or in his own half. So defending stats, defensive duels, Ceballos gets involved with them more, but only 1% higher in terms of success for Aaron Ramsey. So that shows the defensive duels is willing to do that dirty work. Aerial duels, more done by Ramsey, but more successful in the Spaniard's case. Interceptions, 1.4 more interceptions than Ramsey does in each fixture. And also with losses, he loses it 2 times less in each game, and he loses it less in his own half, which is another positive on the Spaniard side. In terms of recoveries, he makes 3 more recoveries each game, and the percentage of those in the opposition half are about equal. But the fact he's doing that more often does lean it most heavily in the Spaniard's favour. So I think when you take into account all of those, when you looked back at that radar graph, looking at how much better Ramsey supposedly is, when you actually look at it in terms of the stats and the statistics, Ceballos for me is ahead of what Ramsey has shown last season. Now, I know Ramsey didn't get as much game time, and you can see from the heat maps on the screen now that you can see the lack of intensity in Ramsey's one compared to Dani Ceballos is obvious. But Dani didn't get exactly that too many less minutes than the Welshman either. So the fact his intensity is that high, I think, is a credit to him and shows how much energy and technical thrill that he would bring to the Arsenal side. So why then, in conclusion, do I think this is an extremely positive signing for Arsenal? Yes, it's a loan deal. I'm not going to beat around the bush. It's frustrating that we're not going to get him permanently. But when you're in a situation like Arsenal are, where you need to sign players and you need to spend big money in improving positions that we're desperate to sign in, such as our wing position, such as left back, possibly and hopefully a permanent option at centre-back for this season, not only with the deal for William Saliba, then when you can replace Ramsey with a player that's, if not as good as he is, maybe even better in some aspects of his game, to get him in for one season for free, and then use the money that hopefully Ceballos would have helped us to get Champions League football next season, where our budget would be much more loose and much more free to spend in that area. I think it's an absolute no-brainer to bring in Dani Ceballos, and if we are to bring him in, I am willing to put my neck on the line and saying it will be one of the signings of the summer, not just for Arsenal, but for teams across the league. Now, you can shoot me 6 months down the line and say that you're an absolute idiot for saying that, but I genuinely think this is one of the smartest signings that Arsenal could make this summer, and that's just where I sit on it. I'm that confident on it that I think he is genuinely a greatly exciting talent. I'm praying to the high heavens that we get this deal done. But that's just my thoughts, so please let me know in the comment section below yours. Please let me know your thoughts on Dani Ceballos. Do you think that getting him for just a year is great? Do you think it's frustrating that we don't get him for longer term? Or do you think that this is not actually the right deal for us and we should be looking to get a more permanent situation in now, rather than waiting a year after having Ceballos in for just that loan year? So tell me in the thoughts. Please, if you've enjoyed the video, give it a like. Please subscribe if you're new with those notifications turned on so you never miss a show. And you'll be back tomorrow for our next video, looking at the latest news, the latest fixtures, whatever it seems to be. But don't worry, it will be there for you. So as always, up the Arsenal. We'll see you again very soon.